latest, my first podcast of the season. My guest is Sean Kelley. He is the play-by-play voice of the Florida Gators. Um, did some homework on Sean Kelley. This man is a native of St. Louis, graduate of Southern Illinois University. Is that correct?
It is.
Your career, you started at KFRU in Columbia, Missouri.
Long time ago, Daniel.
Yeah, yeah. And I noticed in St. Louis there was a guy named Jack Buck, legendary voice of the Cardinals. Also, Harry Carey was the voice of the Cardinals for a while.
Yes, Jack was my inspiration.
Yes. Also, I see you also did pre and post game and halftime for Missouri Tigers radio. How much has it changed since then? I mean, Missouri's gotten good.
Let's see. That was over 20 years ago, like 3 years ago. So it's changed forever. Larry
Yes,
Smith
it
was the
has.
head coach, and then Gary Pinkel after that, and then I moved down to New Orleans after that.
Yeah, Tulane, the New Orleans Pelicans, voice for 14 years, 15 years.
Long time. Yep.
And then the preseason voice of the New Orleans Saints. Found that interesting. On ESPN Radio, my buddy works for ESPN Latino.
I loved my time there. I still work for them, just in a smaller role now that I'm at Florida.
Now, okay, game business. Now, let's talk about the Miami game, 'cause I know you're short on time. Billy Napier. A lot of people talked about him on the hot seat. We all know he's on the hot seat this year. What does his future look like in Gainesville, and how many wins do you think he's going to need to keep his job?
I don't, there's really no talk of hot seat here on campus and within these walls. I think there has to be some realization of what Florida was when he got the job and the type of job that he had to go through to get them back to relevancy again. And, I think there's going to be a significant jump from year 2 to year 3 here. But this was a major overhaul that had to happen for Napier. And I'm not so sure you can sit there and say, oh, he's got to win X number of games to keep his job, because that's just not the conversation here. And Florida's going to play the toughest schedule in the country. And one could argue it's the toughest schedule in modern college football history. I mean, it's amazing when you look at 8 opponents inside the top 25, and 4 or 5 of them are going to end up being in the top 10, likely, before it's all said and done. So how do you measure against that? So
no, you don't.
Is it progress? Is it looking to be in the right direction? Yeah, and in a significant way. I think that's the measuring stick that Florida's looking at Napier right now.
Now look at the new additions. You add new people to the staff this year. I think 33 years of experience, if I'm not mistaken. One of them on the defensive side. Well, I believe mainly on the defensive side of the ball. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Ron Roberts is a big boost to get here for the Gators. He's kind of the godfather in a lot of ways of modern football defense, the college level. He's kind of mentored so many guys now in the business, and for him to come in now as the co-coordinator with Austin Armstrong, who at last year when he was hired, he was the youngest at 31 years of age. So Roberts has made a big difference. They made position coach changes at defensive back and on the defensive line. I think those are significant. And then to have Joe Houston come in from the New England Patriots and help with special teams, those are really the biggest changes on field. And then Tyler Miles took over the strength and conditioning program in the offseason. And look, that's been a change that you can see just in looking at the practice field. The guys have changed, body types, speeds changed, all those things. And then just the vibe around that, the feeling that the players have for Tyler and what he's been able to do for them in the offseason. So pretty major overhaul, but needed in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Graham Mertz, to me, the expectations for the season is through the roof, and of course, they say unfinished business. Talk about that, and also one of my questions from Peter Ariz of Canes Insight asked, "The field this weekend."
Repeat that last part there, Daniel. If you don't mind.
Expect DJ Lagway on the field this weekend?
It wouldn't surprise me. It'll be in a supporting role. Maybe there's a DJ Lagway package. I'm not so sure. I know what to label it, but this is Graham Mertz's football team. He is entrenched as the starting quarterback. You can't ignore the talent that DJ Lagway has, but you have to be realistic about where he is in his development as a potential SEC quarterback. He is not ready to start SEC football. That's not the case. That doesn't mean, though, that he won't be on the field in some form or fashion. So I, like everybody else, I'm curious to see how that happens this weekend. I just know this. Graham Mertz is quarterback number 1 for the Florida Gators.
No question about it. Montrell Johnson, talk about I know he's been hurt. Do you expect him to see any action this Saturday? And what's his expectations
Uh,
for the season?
Still a little yet to be determined, I think. Thankfully, the knee injury came very early in camp, day 1 or 2. They operated on that knee right away, so he's had time. Uh, as opposed to if this happened a week or 2 ago. So I think there's a chance he plays. Just like most college football teams, I think they're going to play it close to the cuff here as to what his availability will be for Saturday. But look, he led the Gators in rushing last year. He's a 5.6 yards per carry guy. Um, you know, career touchdowns are approaching 30 now. He's one of the premier returning backs, not only in the SEC, but I think in the country. And I think you'd have to have him in a top 10 conversation in that sense. So the Gators would love to have him back this weekend. I'd love to have him back this weekend. We'll see if that happens, but he's the lead guy in a running back room that's pretty talented, even with the departure of Mr. Etn.
Yes, and also I look at the receiving game. It definitely starts with Wilson. You know that he's supposed to be the real deal. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, he's a star in the making. I mean, yards after catch reminds me. When it comes to yards after the catch, let's think about Miami's receivers coming back.
Yes,
uh,
we have coming
yeah,
back.
let's not sleep on Restrepo and George here. And George was a
Yes,
big yards after catch guy. So Trey Wilson's that kind of talent. He's got high end speed at 22 miles per hour. He's a tough go get the ball kind of catch guy. He'll do a little bit of the spectacular too. That helps. But he's the lead receiver in this group. You lose Ricky Pearsall, but I think that DK, the transfer from Wisconsin's a big deal. You get Elijah Badger from Arizona State. Khalil Jackson's back. Aiden Mizell, who was the Jet as a freshman last year, but undeveloped as really a receiver, has taken a big step into his sophomore year. They've got some talent in that room. Graham Mertz has more weapons overall than he did a year ago.
yeah, definitely. And I look at the trenches. I mean, the offensive line. I mean, that's to me a big question mark. Talk about that, and then on the defensive line. Now, how will the offensive line have to deal with a guy like Bain? Has that been talked about this week?
Talked about. I mean, come on. If I could stick 8 offensive linemen out there, I would. When you're dealing with Bain and the way that Miami plays up front, that front seven defensively is so talented. And look, they like to dial up pressure, maybe more so than anybody in the ACC. So it's coming, and the Gators' offensive line better be ready. They're bigger, they're more healthy than they were a year ago, but I'd agree. I think the Gators' offensive line is a question mark that needs to be answered.
Mhm.
But Jake Slaughter's a really solid center. Austin Barber, who couldn't finish the year last year, he played hurt for half the season at least. He's back at left tackle. And then Damian George has made a move from tackle to guard. So I would expect to see him at right guard. And there's been a lot of competition at right tackle. Who are the twos going to be? It's going to be wicked hot on Saturday at the Swamp.
Yes.
So you're going to need some depth on both sides, down there where the guys put their hands in the grass. So that to me, just like most any other football game, there's a lot to be decided uh, between those two fronts. And for Miami, they're going to have to deal with an improved Gators defensive front too. And we talk about how this defense can be better in Gainesville. Affecting the other quarterbacks got to be a big storyline for Florida throughout the schedule.
How are they dealing with having to prepare for a guy like Cam Ward?
Well, I think that in a lot of ways they are fully respectful of what Ward was able to do at Washington State. When you look at efficiency, Mertz and Ward are very similar to what they did last season. The other thing that's kind of interesting about Ward is that, like Mertz, when it comes to air yards per attempt, there's not much there, right? I mean, it's just over 6 yards per attempt. So he liked to dump it off. And again, that was an air raid type offense that he was operating up there. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to blow you away with his speed, but he sure knows how to make guys miss. I think he's a good scrambling quarterback. He can throw when you least expect it in the pocket or getting out of the pocket. He's a seasoned vet. We're talking about two quarterbacks going head to head this weekend that have been through it. I mean, this is not the game that we saw between these two teams in 2019, where we had some guys, kind of either getting their feet wet collegiately at quarterback or trying to figure out who the starter was. It was kind of a mess, really, between the two when they played in Orlando. This year, you've
I was
got
there.
Yeah, this year you've got, a guy in Mertz back for his second season with Florida, and he's 23 years old. And here comes Ward, and obviously he's done what he did. We're talking about a Pac-12 last year that had three NFL quarterbacks come out in the draft, and he's right there amongst them statistically and production wise. So now
Yeah.
does that translate with Miami? I think we as fans get a real treat, right, in the opener. I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
I'm trying to think. Not many teams have this kind of ball game to open a season in this day and age,
Oh
and
yeah.
and
Need more of
so,
that, in my
yep,
opinion.
yep, and well, you may get it. I don't know. Florida's won 33 straight home openers. Some of that is they've beaten good teams. Some of that is most teams don't schedule 19th ranked Miami or anybody else in the top 20, to open a
Yeah,
football season at
that's
home.
true.
At home, that's the qualifier in your
Yes.
home
Yes.
opener. So, no, I just look. My first year here 2 years ago, Florida opened a home against Utah, who was ranked at the time, and that's as close as I can get to. Man, what a way to open, and
Wow.
a thrilling game at the Swamp. And now you ramp it up with an in-state rival and two programs that, in a lot of ways, are in a similar spot, um, relying on some key transfers and have got to make a turn more toward the good. And certainly that's the case. So I think that when you talk about, and look, should we all put all these eggs in the basket for one game? Mm, mm, not
Okay.
necessarily, but this
Yeah.
one,
This is a big one.
that's a big one for both. Big
Yeah,
one for
and
both.
yeah, I was very impressed with Florida's youth movement. I mean, there's a lot of youth on that side of the ball, especially
Not as
defense and
much as
offense.
last year. Not as much as last year. Last year, I mean, the amount of freshmen that were asked to do things that they weren't ready to do was remarkable. They bring in over 41,000 snaps of experience this year. Napier
Wow.
hasn't had that yet. So a lot of those bumps, bruises, and growing pains from last year, you hope kind of translate. Like, for example, let me give you an example. Jordan
Yes.
Castell at safety for the Gators. He was thrown into the fire when he really wasn't ready last year. But look, all that time on task has to pay off at some point, and he's made a big jump. And now you put him alongside a guy like Asa Turner, who transfers as a vet from Washington, played for a national championship last year, and all of a sudden the dynamic of the Gators secondary is much different than it was a year ago. So Trey Wilson goes from freshman to sophomore. There's a lot of youth still, but at least it's experienced youth, if that's even a phrase. It's kind of like
Yeah,
almost
that's
an
not much.
oxymoron.
Yeah, keys to me, the keys to the game. One, they have Miami has to get the merch. That's number one. Number two, I think the running game's gonna need to step up big and against that Gator defensive front. And I think three, get the crowd out of the game. That's my keys to Miami's win. What's the keys to the game for Florida to
Well,
beat Miami?
good luck on your third key. They're foaming at the mouth here. It is sold out and then some. And
Yes,
again,
I'm
there'll be
aware.
Miami fans that come up,
Four
but this
thousand
is
tickets.
yeah, this is a Gator faithful right now that is yearning for big start to the season and against a team that frankly they don't like very much. And look, the feeling is mutual. I understand that,
Yes.
but that is
Sean, you lost your mic a sec. I lost you there, man. I'll go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
this is a very difficult place to play. I don't know if you take the crowd out of it. Look, if Montreal Johnson, if he plays and the Gator running backs can get going, that's a big deal. Keeping Mertz upright is a big deal for Florida. These kind of, obviously marry up to what you're talking about. I think that in a lot of ways, the big play is a factor this weekend. Which team can strike for a big play? It might be the difference in a one-score game, and I don't doubt for any minute that this won't be a one-score game. Um, and for Florida, they've got to be a better finishing team than they were a year ago. That's one thing. They had a lead in the fourth quarter in several of their losses. If they can find a way to be a better finishing team, it's a key against Miami, and then obviously the other big boys on the schedule.
Yeah, and I'll give you my prediction. So I know you're calling the game, so you can't do one. Um, for me, I think this is a big game for Miami. It's a big game for Florida. Biggest game I would say in the Mario Cristobal era to date. I think it'll be tough. I think it's going to be a hostile environment. We all know that. I will say in the end, Miami 28, Florida 21. That's my prediction.
All right. Well, I don't
I know
do them,
you. I
but
know you can't do it because you're calling the game.
yeah, but I hope you're wrong.
Hey, Sean, thank you so much for coming on. I had all the technical difficulties and all that. Greatly appreciate it. Have a good broadcast Saturday, and good luck to you guys this season.
Same to you guys, except for Saturday. And Daniel,
Yeah,
thanks for we found a way. We got it done today.
we got it done. That's all. That's
Yep.
the weekend. Whatever there's a will is a way.
Enjoy the season, Daniel.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye bye.
Thank you.